The community centre stood like a sentinel at the edge of the village, its roof tiles slick with the damp breath of evening. Each tile bore a crest, embossed with the emblem of the old ways, a mark of continuity that stretched beyond memory. The wooden beams, dark with centuries of oil and care, held up a ceiling too high for whispers to reach, trapping the weight of unspoken prayers with its embrace. Inside, the hall stretched vast and shadowed, an expanse of polished wood reflecting the flickering glow of oil lamps. It was not a space. It was a space carefully preserved. Silence had been cultivated here for generations, and words had been sealed away, leaving only the quiet rustling of robes and the occasional shuffle of feet. It was a place of waiting, and Yuki had always waited. She knelt in the centre of the hall, her back straight, her hands resting lightly against her thighs, and her eyes lowered. She had been taught this posture since childhood, how to hold herself and keep her presence from disrupting the delicate balance of silence. The communicator was supposed to come. She had been told this as a child, that one day the woman who had once spoken freely, who had carried words through the streets as if they were not dangerous, would return. But she never had. Still, Yuki came here every evening. Still, she waited. Beyond the heavy wooden doors, the village was dissolving into night. The narrow streets wound through low wooden houses, their lattice windows dark, their paper screens drawn tight. People moved in hushed steps, their figures slipping soundlessly through the courtyards. No voices called across the rooftops. No laughter disturbed the air. Even the children, so restless in their tiny bodies, had learnt to move without sound. To be heard was to be noticed, and to be seen was to be exposed, which invited consequences. Yuki had never questioned it, not until the day she had found the human papers. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard, their ink worn and fading, the papers whispered to her of a different time, when people had spoken aloud without fear, when voices had risen together, unguarded, unafraid, a time when the communicator had walked among them. Yuki had read the words in secret, tracing the faded strokes with trembling fingers, trying to imagine what it would be like to speak, to hear her own voice shaping thoughts into the air. It had felt impossible, and yet a small rebellious part of her had believed. She had never told anyone, not even her mother, who had taught her the rules before she could walk. Speech is a disturbance. Emotion is dangerous. The eyes must be kept lowered, the breath kept even. Silence is survival. She had obeyed, and yet, deep inside her, something had always resisted. A shift in the air pulled her back to the present. The lamps flickered, the polished floor gleamed, and then a creak. The sound was slight, barely more than the groan of old wood settling into place, and yet it sent a ripple through the room, a tremor so slight that Yuki might have dismissed it, if not for the way it coiled inside her chest. The doors of the community centre shifted, not from the wind, not from the caretaker's careful hands, but from something else, someone else. The silence thickened. Yuki did not move, did not lift her gaze, because that was the rule. No one was to look until it was permitted. A breath of night air slipped inside, cool against her skin, carrying with it something unfamiliar, something new. And then footsteps, soft, measured, deliberate. Not the shuffling tread of the caretaker, not the hesitant steps of an elder slipping in late. These steps did not belong here. They moved with quiet confidence, unhurried, unapologetic. Yuki's fingers twitched against her kimono. Would she dare? Would she lift her eyes? The communicator! It had to be her. Her pulse thrummed in her throat, but she remained still, kneeling in perfect form, her hands steady against her lap. The footsteps slowed. A pause. Then a breath. Soft, steady. But it was not a breath meant to be hidden. It was meant to be heard. Yuki's spine tightened. She had never heard anyone breathe like that before. Not here, not in this place where even the living held themselves as if already dead, where breath itself was a burden to be carried in silence. And yet, this breath, this single unguarded inhalation, was a declaration. It filled the space, settled into it, claimed it. And then, I have come. The words did not belong here. They did not belong anywhere in this world of hushed movements and bowed heads. And yet, they had been spoken, low, clear, unapologetic. A sound so simple, so impossible, so undeniable. Yuki's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, and yet, now that it had come, she did not know what to do with it. A choice lay before her. She could remain as she was, kneeling in perfect stillness, pretending nothing had changed. Or she could lift her eyes. She could see. She could meet the gaze of the woman who had dared to speak. The woman who had waited for no permission. The woman who had shattered the silence with nothing more than her breath. The moment stretched, balanced on the edge of something vast and unknown. Yuki swallowed, and then, slowly, so slowly, she looked up.